Yo, howdy. Welcome to another episode of Tristan Take Video. Today, I'm taking you guys on the journey of improving your cycling through one simple training test. That test is a 20-minute FTP test. And today I'm gonna teach you guys how to do your first 20-minute power test. I'm gonna come along for the ride and do one myself. I'm also gonna give you 5 really handy hints as to how you can improve your FTP testing to get the best possible result. So stay with me, let's get cracking on with a 20-minute power test. So if you've never trained to power, and even if you've never trained on your bike, today's video is one for you. Today's video is about how you can improve your functional threshold power with one simple training test. So the reason I'm now sitting in my living room as opposed to still out riding my bike is this. I actually filmed this video and I produced it and I released it about 3 weeks ago, and then I decided to take it down. I realized I'd made a couple of mistakes in the first video, and even more importantly, I realized that I wanted to make the video more interesting for you guys by including some professional cyclist opinions on how to do your first training test. So I sat down with Roche from DSM, who is a 2-time Vuelta Espana stage winner and who has just announced his retirement after a 17-year career in the professional peloton. I sat down with O'Connor, who rides for AG2R-Citroen, who this year in 2021 won a stage of the Tour de France and came 4th overall. And I also sat down with Australian professional cyclist Brodie Chapman, who is a female for the FDJ women's squad and is one of the best women's climbers in the entire world. So before we go too far, let's just have a quick word on what FTP is and what training to power is about. FTP stands for functional threshold power. That is the amount of power that you can hold for 1 hour. The FTP test and the number that you end up with at the end is designed to give you a baseline of your fitness. One of the reasons this is important is it tells you how strong you are. It's the equivalent of lifting a certain amount of weight in the gym. Once you can put a number on your FTP, you can start figuring out how long you can ride for, how you compare to pro cyclists, and you can start training to race your mates a little bit more intelligently so you'll win. So your FTP is how much power you can hold for 1 hour. Today we're doing a 20-minute test to find that out. And the reason we're doing a 20-minute test instead of a 1-hour test is it's extremely hard to do a 1-hour all-out power test, mainly because most people don't have access to a climb that goes for an hour continuously, and doing 1 hour of riding on the flat means you're most likely gonna run into a traffic light, or the road's gonna undulate too much, and so you won't be able to hold a consistent power for the entire time. So today's test, we're doing 20 minutes, and then the way that you find your FTP is you multiply the number that you get in watts by 0.95, and that gives you your 1 hour functional threshold power. One of the reasons for training to power versus training to something like heart rate is that power gives you a more accurately measurable and consistent gauge of your performance on the bike, whereas heart rate is variable and it can change based on things like your levels of fatigue or how fresh you are. Through correct training, your power will always improve, whereas your heart rate's only ever going to reach the same kind of maximum. As you get older, your maximum heart rate also comes down, so it's not a good gauge of how fit you are. Whereas power, you can measure in watts. You can really put an accurate number on the amount of work you're doing and on your level of improvement. Okay, so my tip number 1 for you, be ready and be rested. A 20-minute max test is a bloody hard thing on your body, and you want to be ready for it, not only psychologically but physically. I do about 2 to 3 20-minute tests per year to gauge where I'm at, and I always do them after an intense period of training. Last week I came back from the Tour de France. If you haven't watched the Tour de France series, go and watch that now. That was made up of 4 days of intense climbing and quite a lot of efforts. I did quite a lot of hill climb efforts during the Tour de France. So I did a good few days of training in the Dolomites there, and I got some pretty substantial training in my legs. And I'm also rested because I came back from that and I had a good rest week where I didn't do too much in the first half of the week. And then the second half of the week, I just did some cruisy rides just to get my body moving again. So if you're the kind of rider that does your training over the weekend, I would recommend doing your 2 days on the weekend, and then I would recommend having a day off just to let your body recover. I would then recommend doing an easy day, and then on the Wednesday, I would aim to do your 20-minute test then if you can. That gives your body a sufficient amount of time to recover after a bit of training. And then it's really important to do that day before, just an easy day before you do your test, to warm your body back up again and get it moving. So be rested, be ready, make sure you're fully G'd up for this one. Alrighty, so we are here with Nico Roche. He is probably the most experienced cyclist who is in the current peloton, I would say, almost. You've done a few FTP tests before. So you were saying when we caught up last night that you didn't have a power meter when you first started.
No.
So would you do 20-minute tests to feel when you first started, or?
No, it was more about on time.
Okay.
That's the way I used to work on my progression. So I had like my 5 or 6K climb, and that would be my test climb, and see what time I did on top, and if I was quicker or not than the last time, I'd know I was progressing.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you would like try and go quicker and quicker each time.
Yeah, and try and do kind of race speed, which, when you do a climb like that, you're always a little bit pushing higher than your actual FTP.
Yeah.
Also, because of your glycogen reserve, you can actually cheat it a little bit, because you can, on a short amount of time, you can actually go deeper than what you could over a real FTP test. You're not going to hold that for an hour, for example.
Yeah. Now, tip number 2. I always recommend choosing the right terrain to do your FTP test on. There is no point doing it somewhere that doesn't suit you, or somewhere that you don't know, or somewhere that you don't feel comfortable on. For the purpose of this test today, I'm doing it on the most ridden climb in Girona for testing, and that is the climb of Sant Martí Sacalm in Amer. This is where most World Tour guys come to test themselves. This is where I've come to test myself quite a lot in the past. But the climb of Sant Martí Sacalm is about 8.4 kilometers. It's got a really consistent gradient of just over 7%. The KOM on this climb is a staggering 21 minute by Australian Jay Vine. And my best time all the way to the top is about 24 minutes. Today, we're not actually going to use the entire climb. We're just going to use the first 7Ks or however far I can get in 20 minutes. That's because we don't want to go above 20 minutes. We don't need to go above 20 minutes today for the FTP test. We just want to do 20 minutes, bang on the dot, see what we end up with in terms of power, and go from there.
So, when you're talking about watts, it's always easier to pull out watts when the gradient is harder.
Yeah.
Apart from some very cases, for example, Rowan, Dennis, and Wigo are known to be able to push the same watts on the flat than they do on the climb. Yeah. I can't do that.
Yeah. You and me both.
Yeah. I can't hold my FTP on a 20-minute flat stretch. I can only do it on the climb. So the better, it can't be a 15% climb, because then it's a bit
slow,
fake.
maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think between 6 and 9 is a perfect area. And the thing is, you also have to base yourself that it doesn't have to be the perfect climb, because you never get a perfect climb racing. There's always a corner, there's always a moment where maybe it's not as steep, it could be a little downhill on the middle, or else, it's just quite complicated to find that perfect climb. But like I said, that perfect climb doesn't exist in a race.
So we're here with Australian professional female cyclist for the FDJ team.
FDJ Nouvelle Aquitaine Futuroscope. It's a mouthful. I forgive you.
Brodie Chapman. So we're here with Brodie Chapman. She's a female cyclist for FDJ. You won a stage of and the overall of the Tour of the Gila in the US. So Brodie's an extremely good climber. Would you say you have a specific kind of favorite climb to do an FTP test on?
Generally, it's been suggested to me by coaches and stuff to choose a climb between 6 to 8%, because then you do get that torque, and you want a consistent climb for sure. So as gradual as you can get, like not up and down, because that will put spikes in it and everything like that. So I choose 6 to 8% steady climb. Definitely something I know, I suppose, just helps a little bit as well.
So one of the favorite ones that I had was actually in Italy when I was living in Varese, just outside Cuvignone, Monte Cuvignone. That was about a 28-minute climbs from the bottom to the top, but I would get my perfect 20 minutes in there. But once again, there was like 1K or 800 meters where I just kind of flattened out. But there was also like 12-14% ramps. So I wasn't reading, but it was good because you never see a car on that road.
Okay. Which is the main thing. You really want to avoid cars, hey?
Yeah, you want to avoid cars.
So you can concentrate.
Yeah.
And...
Like, you know, that's one of the things now on a different topic when you're going for Strava and you're flat out and next thing there's a car that pulls out of the gateway and you have to slam the brakes. It's like, no, that's not fair, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's always good when you can avoid one of those traffic roads.
Tip number 3 for you. Make sure you set up your bike computer correctly so you can see all the right data while you're doing your effort, and make sure you calibrate your power meter. That's integral. The way I set up my lap page for doing efforts is this. At the top, I have speed. That's just purely an interest thing. I quite like seeing my speed. You have the lap, so that's the amount of time that this specific lap has been going for. At the start of your effort, you want to press the lap button, which is usually here when you're rolling, and what that does is it starts a lap, so it starts timing you. The next field I have set up is my watts for 3 seconds. The reason I have 3-second average and not just 1-second average is that if you have it 1, it spikes up and down all over the place, whereas with 3 seconds, it gives you an average for the previous 3 seconds and it smooths it out so you're not seeing these wild jumps with every pedal stroke. The other one I have set up is your lap watts. Your lap watts is your average watts for the amount of time that you've been doing the lap. Another little field that I have in there that I sometimes scroll down and add is my last lap watts. So that's how many watts I did for the last lap. Once this reaches 20 minutes, you want to hit the lap button again, and that will stop your lap, and it will give you the number there so you can see what your watts were for that last lap. And I have my heart rate there, which I try and not look at. Generally, I don't even run it, but today I'm running it for the sake of the video. So I'm here with Ben O'Connor. You obviously know Ben O'Connor. Ben won a stage of the Tour de France this year. He was climbing exceptionally well. It's now off season, and so you're not doing any FTPs tests for a little while, but tell me, through this year, how many FTP tests do you reckon you did?
I think I did 2. Only 2 this year.
Okay, and when did you do those?
I did the first one in January in Spain, and then I think I did another one in around May. So yeah, not a lot. There's not really a lot you need to test. It's probably better to do it in a race than test yourself.
Okay, so you this goes against everything I say in the video.
Fuck, sorry.
No, that's right.
Well, literally,
No, in the video I'm like, oh, I tested yourself a few times.
I've done my best 20 minutes more or less in a race.
Okay.
So that's what it matters for me.
So for the specific purpose of doing an FTP test, when you go out to do them, are you doing them when you're fit? Or do you do one in January as like a benchmark for January and then go from there?
Yeah, the first one you definitely do as a benchmark to see where you're at and how far, what you should be trying to aim for the rest of the next month per se. Okay. So often you try and do like your previous best, but for me I try and subtract around 20 watts. So let's say if I can do 430 to 440, I'll start out at 420 and then see how it goes.
You'll aim for 420 at the start of the season.
Yeah, and you have, when you started, you have on your Wahoo or your Garmin average power with power, so that you just try and keep it as smooth as you can, so that you can try and hit that average. Because the aim's not to be the fastest, because that's actually a different game. It's the most amount of power that you can actually do.
So tip number 4 before I go and start my FTP test is this: don't go out too hard too soon. It is an age-old issue. It's really important when you're doing a 20-minute test to pace yourself really, really well. One key little point that I generally tell most people who ask me about pacing strategy is that when you're doing a 20-minute test, go in 5-minute blocks. So break it down into the first 5 minutes, the next 10 minutes after that, and then the last 5 minutes you just want to go all out.
The first 5 minutes is probably the most crucial. If you're hurting after 5 minutes, you're probably not going to survive the 20. For me, that's the most crucial point. I try and start normally 10 watts, more or less than what you can think that you can do. And then if you can accelerate it at the end, then you should be able to get past your PB. But if not, then that's what you're going to be able to do on the day. You can't always be perfect as well. So, yeah.
What are you aiming for in a climb? Are you looking for a certain gradient, or...?
You just look for consistent gradient the whole time. Yep. Because really it's just about being a smooth effort as much as you can. And the smoother the climb, the better it is. The less flat sections, the better as well. Normally it's between that like 6 to 8% kind of gradient. You don't want to have something super steep because you're just going to get nailed in your arms as well when it gets that steep. So also low altitude. So yeah, for anyone who's in like America, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes at altitude
makes a
obviously
difference.
I live in Andorra as well, so if you're starting at 1,300 meters, you're going to finish up at 1,800, which is far too high. So
It's harder to breathe.
be as low as you can and as smooth as you can.
If this is your first FTP test, what you really want to try and do is hold back the first 5 minutes because you're a bit pumped up with adrenaline and you're G'd up and your heart rate hasn't come up yet. But what you need to try and do is just relax. Just do the first 5 minutes, commit to your specific number, and so you know you've paced well, you've kept something in the tank for the end, and you'll absolutely smash it. With all that being said, I'm about to go and do this test, and I'm pretty keen to go and give this one a whack. So let me go and do this, and I'll see you on the other side. Ooh, let's do it. Five minutes in. Okay, 10 minutes in, still sitting quite pretty on the watts. "16 minutes in, just wanted to say one thing. Can you please like this video, subscribe for me? Thanks, guys. All right, 1 minute to go. Let me see if I can lift. Try and lift, come on.
When I did my first FTP test up King Lake in Victoria, Australia, I just went to feel. My coach said, ride as hard as you can for 20 minutes. And so you have a bit of a sense of how to pace yourself, and you should be empty at the end of the 20 minutes was the guide. So don't look at power, just look at time and try and pace yourself to feel, and make sure you're empty at the end of the 20 minutes. Like, you couldn't push another watt more. You know, obviously I think FTP is a changing thing. There's times when you're different times of the season or coming back from injury where your FTP will be lower. It's not like a measure of your worth.
Constant, always.
But I personally still to this day, despite having a good number to base it off, I actually perform better when I ride to feel in an FTP test. So I have quite a good sense of my own, you know, perception of effort and effort. So I will just look at time, put in some really good music that I know I won't have to change a song midway through. Really good self-talk. I think there's no room for putting yourself down during an FTP test. Like, I feel crap, I'm not doing well. Like, you might feel all that, but you haven't got time. You only have time to champion yourself. Like, are you good? Yeah, I'm good. And that's what I do. And I always get way better numbers when I just push to feel and
talk yourself up.
Because I'm looking at time, I look at the last 5 minutes, and I try to really ramp it up and empty myself. You know, even do a little imaginary sprint to a line in the last bit. That's how I do it. So.
Alrighty, so that is FTP test out the way. I'm just cruising up to the top of the climb now, just to warm myself down, bring my heart rate back down. I'm about to cruise down this one, and I'm gonna head home and let's do some further analysis once I get home.
Around Monaco, I do a lot of tests on called the Roche.
Yep. Even with all the corners.
Yeah, we do it on the second. Yeah, because you know it's like I said, it's there is this part with the switchbacks.
Yeah.
But it's also a pretty constant climb. So we do it from after the village.
Yeah.
So about 6K to the top.
Okay. Yeah.
And
so you're just reaching the top when you get to the 20-minute.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So as you can see, I'm back in my apartment in Girona now, and it's time to jump on the computer and do a quick deep dive into the ride from this afternoon. So this is my tip number 5. Always analyze your rides afterwards and look for any strengths or weaknesses and work out what you can do better for next time. Cycling is a continual process of improvement, and one of the big parts of that is looking at your rides and seeing what went well for you and what you could do better. So let's jump on the computer and have a quick look. So as you can see, we've got the ride here. This is the ride from this afternoon. One of the things that we're going to do immediately is have a look at the laps. You can do this through the phone, but I like taking a closer look through the computer. Click on laps here and it will bring up your laps. This is the 20-minute lap. As you can see, I averaged exactly 20 Ks an hour, which is very nice. 358 watts, so I was a bit above on my watts, which I'm pretty happy with. When you click on the lap, you can get a little analysis of your lap up here. It shows you how smooth or how non-smooth you were in my case. I jumped around a little bit there, but I was trying to film the vlog at the same time, and I wasn't concentrating perfectly. I think had I been concentrating a little bit harder and not vlogging as much, I probably would have been able to put out maybe 365 watts if I was really pushing it. You can also see my heart rate here, 178 beats a minute for the 20 minutes. The other way to look at your power when you're on Strava is to jump over to the analysis function here on the left-hand side. Jump on the analysis, you get this screen here, and you can have a look at all of your data throughout the entire ride. And then what you can do is you can select a specific period that you want to look at. So this is the 20-minute test, as you can tell there from that consistent amount of power. And as you scroll along, you can see yourself climbing up the climb. You can also analyze your specific watts over on the right-hand side here, and it gives you your averages here. So you can also dive into a smaller part, so I can see the first 1 minute there or so and just have a look at that. So I averaged 415 watts for the first minute. So actually that was for 45 seconds. The other thing we can do here is click on Power Curve over on the left-hand side and do a little analysis. This is part of Strava's premium subscription offer. They give you your power curve. So you can have a look at your power curve, which is always interesting. You can see I went to exactly 20 minutes, I hit 357 watts. And if you click on that and then you go up here to watts per kilo, you can see that averaged about 5.78 watts per kilo. That's based on a weight of around 61.5 kilos, which is what I usually am. And then tell me, your highest 20 minutes of this year, do you know what it was?
Well, I actually don't remember. I think I've done 440 to 445 watts at 67.5 kilos.
So what's that? That's like 6.7 watts a kilo.
I don't know what it is maths-wise, but
6.5 maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty high. I definitely know in a race I've done upwards of 430 for the 20 minutes, so that's where it matters most.
So what's your max 20-minute power ever? You said you did it in a race recently?
Yeah, I didn't. No, actually, I did my max 20 minute. I did a training just about 2 weeks ago, so it was 457.
457 watts.
Yeah,
okay.
which was you know, I started off, I was going to do like a 10-15 minute effort, and then got this climb, and I felt really good, and I said, all right, I think I can do, this could be the last chance I'm going to do a proper FTP test, because I knew I was going to retire. So I said, I'm just going to smash myself, and I just gave everything I had to the top. So if you calculate, you know, we're talking about it early on about the 0.95 ratio, then it's, we'll say around, was about 425, 430-ish with the FTP. So it was like 457 in power and about FTP of about 430 something. So I was pretty happy with myself.
The thing with testing is that I've found the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, in the sense that I used to get so nervous about doing testing. And there's been times where I'd start and bail out, but if you just do it more frequently, first of all, you get to see that variations are normal, and so you don't berate yourself if you see a different number to what you expect. And yeah, you just get more used to the process. You also get used to knowing what works for you and what time of day and what climb you like, etc. So more testing is better in that sense.
That's all great advice. Now, the final metric that I want to talk to you guys about is VAM. This is 0.6. This is the bonus point. So VAM, it is your vertical ascent in meters. This is a number that you can look at on any climb and see how fast you are climbing uphill without having either heart rate or power for that segment. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a segment and we're going to look at the VAM for that segment. So let's look at the VAM on the Sant Martí Sacalm segment here. VAM shows up here. That's how many vertical meters I will have climbed in 1 hour if I held a consistent amount of power all the way to the top. So if we jump onto the full segment for Sant Martí Sacalm and you look at the other riders, you can see Jay Vine did the climb with a VAM of 1,718.1 meters in an hour. That's what he would have climbed had he held that exact same pace for an hour. If we scroll down to my hardest effort up Sant Martí Sacalm, the VAM for that was 1,478. So that's a pretty decent number. Anything above about 1,000 VAM means you're climbing extremely well. As you can see, when TJ Van Garderen did this in 2018, he didn't have heart rate and he didn't have power, but he still gets his VAM number. So what you can do is if you do a climb and you look at the segment afterwards, scroll over to the VAM and have a look at where you sit, and it gives you an indicator of how well you're climbing compared to others. So using VAM is a really interesting way of training. It's especially useful if your power meter runs out of battery and you still want to train. It's especially useful if you don't have a power meter and you don't want to buy a power meter or a heart rate strap, and especially if you're doing the same climbs over and over again, because what you can do is you can set yourself a benchmark of what you can climb that climb at in terms of VAM, and then you can go back and you can try and go one better without needing specific instruments like a heart rate strap or a power meter crankset. Perfect. I think that's about it. I will say a big congratulations for an amazing career. We should probably do another video at some point about retirement and 17 years after you started racing. I got some questions on that, but yeah, this
and how much my FTP went down after 3 months of retirement.
yeah, we should do that one. Maybe I'll be able to keep up with you then. Thanks so much.
No worries.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, cheers. And yes, I think that's about it for this episode. I've done plenty of deep diving here, probably far too much chat. You guys are probably bored by now, so I'll leave you to it. I would highly recommend going and giving yourself a 20-minute FTP test 1-over to see how you go. And I'd love to hear your feedback on whether you found this training video insightful or whether you just found it boring and you'd like to see more adventure rides. Luckily tomorrow I'm doing a massive one, and so I have a vlog coming from that. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next episode soon, and I'll chat to you guys later. All right, adeu.